So, as we are continuing to focus on the fight against cancer, it's important to remember that diagnosis is not the end of the road. In fact, it's just the beginning, isn't it? And the question really that we are trying to understand is that does life get back to normal, or is it a new normal that cancer survivors, cancer patients, those fighting with cancer, they have to understand and build and make. How does the body cope with the therapies? What about relationships, mental health, quality of life, and all the bucket lists that we may have? So all of these are a lot of questions that I have. Let us quickly start. Dr. Bhuvan Chugh, I want to start with you. Cancer diagnosis, there is so much fear around it because, the big belief or notion is that this is the end. With the new technologies, the advancements in medical science, do you think that perspective needs to change and we need to educate and spread awareness that cancer diagnosis may not be the end?
You rather made a very important point when you said that do the patients end up having a new normal? And I broadly agree with you. It's a new normal mentally, physically, emotionally, at every level. Obviously, with the newer technologies and with the more and more awareness, patients, when they come to us, they understand that this disease per se is a curable disease for the vast majority, it's a curable disease. They are in search for the right medical advice where they can find the confidence at every possible level, and they can possibly understand the disease, understand the treatment and the implications, and get treated from there. Obviously, once they are treated, they need to rebuild their lives again. It's, there's a constant struggle with the anxiety of having a recurrence. There are the sexual relationship with the partners have to be redefined. The physical activities. So I'm a breast cancer guy, and most of these breast cancer women, what I generally end up saying to them is that chronologically you may have aged six months for the entire treatment, but your body possibly has aged almost a year because you've undergone chemotherapy, you've been on the bed for almost quite a lot of time. So you need to rebuild your bulky muscles, you need to tone them again. So there are multiple levels to this discussion which we end up having. Yeah. Does the technology help in all of these? Absolutely it does.
You've touched upon some very important points, and we will discuss them in detail. Let me get Dr. Swarupa Mitra in. Dr. Mitra, receiving a cancer diagnosis is not easy, and there is a lot of emotion that comes into play. What is your advice to patients? What are the practical steps? What should a patient after diagnosis do first?
Thank you so much, Jagran, for having me here. So the question you have asked is absolutely very, very relevant. However much we say that cancer is curable, however much we say that cancer should be diagnosed early, once a patient is diagnosed with cancer, not only for the patient, for the family and the loved ones, it is devastating. It is definitely so. So the word you say practical, so it is not the time I can tell the patient be practical. Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that give him the time, give the patient and the family the time to recuperate. He goes into depression, he goes into a lot of mental upheavals. So give him the time. But who gives the time? So because this is the time, I think doctors as oncologists, we are responsible. Because the family is in a state of shock. So who helps that patient? I think this is the time we need to reach out to the patient, that giving him the time that, yes, you are not alone, you are here. Yeah. So after the patient actually understands, accepts that one has cancer, then comes the points you were saying being practical. So first of all, he has to go to the oncologist and clear all his doubts. He has to know about what the cancer he is suffering from, the stage, what kind of a treatment he needs to undergo, and what are the side effects has to be. So he has to understand them. And at the same time, all the stigmas associated with the cancer has to be talked about. Yeah. Then after that comes the role of reaching out. Now is the time when the patient reaches out. That means to the counselors. There are
Yeah.
plenty of counselors who are blessings for such patients.
Yeah.
And also, there are people who help out, the social workers, the survivors. So all these, they work together, and it is a combined journey that the patient makes along with us.
Right, right. Wonderfully explained, Dr. Mitra. Let me get in Dr. Arun Kumar Goyal here. Sir, she talked about how it's important to give time, but I also know that doctors want to quickly get into, treatment mode. They don't want to waste time because time is of, it is crucial, it's all relevance. Now, one of the things that patients feel afraid of, whether it is any kind of therapy, chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery for that matter, they think that, quality of life बहुत suffer करेगा. I know people who say, ज़िंदगी बड़ी होनी चाहिए, लंबी नहीं, बाबू मोशा. They say that, because they say that, यार लंबी जी कर भी क्या करूँगा if I'm not being able to be myself, do the things that I want to do. Now, would you, for our audience, explain that, is that a relevant fear, when it comes to surgery, or now with the advancements, again, I'm saying that in today's time, the quality of life can be something that can be preserved even when we are going through treatment?
I think quality of life is, aaj ke din, it's one of the biggest concerns. And let me say why it has become important is because we have made so much progress in curing. अगर हम 100 में से 90 cancers को early stage में cure कर सकते हैं, then the focus shifts to, because we have so many survivors and they are going to live their long lives. We have cancers happening in 40s and 50s, तो patient का 30 साल 40 साल की life होती है उसके बाद में, so quality of life becomes critical. I am right now not focusing on the quality of life effects during treatment. They are mostly, say, temporary effects of, say, surgery, radiation or chemotherapy, but long term. So long term चीज़ें थी quality of life में, जैसे breast cancer में है, loss of breast, that affected body image, self-confidence, relations between husband and wife, and in general, sometimes people lost their job. Same way we had, say, cancer of the intestine, rectal cancer, you remove the rectum, patient has a permanent stoma, एक colostomy या ileostomy बन जाता है lifelong, and lot of people are badly affected by it. I have seen many patients refusing curative treatment just because they are going to have a lifelong stoma. Similarly, laryngeal cancer, if the larynx is removed, patient loses the voice. But overall, one, we have realized that as we have become more effective in curing, we are able to customize treatment, and by using combination of treatments, we are able to save organs. So breast cancer में आज के दिन 60 to 70% of cases can have breast conservation surgery, oncoplastic breast conservation surgery. For the remaining patients, we have the option of reconstruction. लेकिन जो सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम जैसे आई वुड से इंडिया में क्या है कि हाई क्वालिटी ट्रीटमेंट इज concentrated in metro cities. The moment you move outside of metros, these options become either totally unavailable or are very limited, and patients जो उनके पास available होता है उसी में treatment कराते हैं. Say our hospital is located in Kundli. This is just 5-6 kilometers outside of Delhi border, but it is the first cancer care facility in that area. We are trying to give, say, state-of-the-art cancer care in that area.
Right.
So physical availability, then financial issues, because cancer treatment is a fairly long treatment. आपको surgery भी चाहिए, chemotherapy भी चाहिए, radiation भी चाहिए. आप इतना सब afford कर सकते हैं कि नहीं? But nowadays we have lot more options, including Ayushman Bharat. So the coverage of cancer treatment is improving.
Right.
Overall, robotics and all have made a difference, but that is more of a short-term effect. That is in terms of recovery from surgery.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for that detailed answer. Let me get in Dr. Prachi Binara, and she's a fertility specialist. And, we wonder that what is a fertility specialist doing in a cancer panel. But can you talk to us about your relevance here? Especially as the cancer diagnosis is, coming at a much younger age.
So Megha, the part of journey I witness for a cancer survivor is she or he has already fought his battle. Now they are ready to start their family. And when I'm breaking the news that he or she is permanently infertile, it's very difficult for her or him to become a parent. It is another disaster.
Yeah. So can you talk to me? Just take a step back. Why is that infertility coming to a cancer survivor?
So generally, cancer treatment involves chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and both these therapies are very essential for curating the cancer. But at the same time, because they are acting on rapidly divided cells, and the sperms or the ovarian tissue is a rapidly dividing cells of our body. So in this course, they lose, rather majority of them lose their fertility potential. So I would say it is very important to counsel such a lady or a man undergoing chemotherapy or radiotherapy to actually do fertility preservation.
Right.
And these days, there are various techniques available for fertility preservations. And, they do not delay the treatment. Just in a matter of span of 10 to 12 days, a woman can freeze her eggs or the man can freeze the sperm. So yes, this is very important to live a healthy lifestyle with a
Yeah,
baby.
and your dreams of holding a
Motherhood.
baby in your arms is possible. I think
Absolutely.
the important and the key thing would be for both these verticals, the fertility vertical and the oncology vertical, to work together. Let me bring in Dr. Preeti Khanna. She's a public health nutritionist. There are conversations of a lot of diet trends for cancer, such as alkaline diets or juicing, or there are so many videos that you see that I stopped having sugar and this is how it's impacted my cancer. Are these claims, worth it? Do they support cancer treatment? In your, experience, do you think there are any proven benefits for some of these diets?
So, Meghna, what happens is that when we are talking about diet is itself, a precursor as well as a preventive measure when it comes to, onsetting the cancer and also how the cancer will get, prolonged and further, how the treatment plan will be there. So when we are talking about diets, first of all these are fat diets, including your alkaline as well as juicing. Juicing definitely would involve a lot of fruits and vegetables that can help in increasing the intake of, antioxidants and fiber, but after a certain limit of, some liters of water in certain patients, these are not recommended. And as far as, sugar and salt are concerned, definitely when we're talking about non-communicable diseases, HFSS, which is high fat, sugar, salt diets and products, are definitely a precursor for all our NCDs, including obesity. So when we're talking about, not having salt or sugar, what we are actually trying to communicate is that it's important to read the labels of the products that we are consuming. So anything which says that this product has more than 10 grams of salt and sugar in a single serve is something that we all should not be consuming that, because as per WHO recommended standards, not more than a teaspoon of sugar and salt is recommended in our diets on a daily basis. So that is something that needs to be taken care of.
Right. Let me get in Dr. Chugh again. Right after diagnosis, Dr. Chugh, the conversation comes to what stage of cancer it is. Why is that important? And do you also decide the line of treatment basis that?
Whenever a patient sitting in front of you, you're obviously talking to a human being. He or she works, he or she has his family. There are so many factors which you consider while you're making a treatment plan. And, as all of my esteemed panelists did suggest, obviously the way you understand cancer, let's take a step back. The way you understand cancer is what is the name, what is the stage, and what is the fitness of the patient. The name generally involves two things. Where did the cancer start from and what type of cancer it is? The stage means how spread out it is. And fitness is you can't have the same treatment for a 20, 40, 60 and 80-year-old. So for each patient who's sitting with you in your clinic, you'll have an individual treatment plan. And so that's where the stage comes in and the person per se comes in. So what most of us end up doing is we end up doing a partner decision making, which I think should be the goal, whether you're sitting in a government hospital and you're trying to operate a patient who's going to have a stoma or a young female who's going to become infertile. So what you need to understand is you need to have a partner decision making. So there are certain steps to the partner decision making. So you sit with the patient, explain the disease and the management in the language, jo bhi bhasha, in whatever way, likh ke, bol ke, in whatever way they understand best. Give them space and time. I don't think unless you're talking about a life-threatening oncological emergencies, there is a short of time. None of us are short of time to start treatment. So you can always tell them, this is what your disease looks like, this is what your treatment is. Share the material which they want to understand. If they want to, read a paper, if they want to go back, research, whatever, or if they trust your word, give them space to make a decision. Let them come back to you and let them tell you their decision. Your role as an oncologist comes in to give them a feedback. This is what I, as an oncologist, feel about your decision. And then when both of you have agreed upon that this is what a good treatment plan looks like, you start with the treatment. And that's the goal should always be. You can't have a 60-year-old retired breast cancer patient being treated as a 35-year-old actively morning from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock working female be treating the same way. You may end up treating them the same way, but they do get the privilege of having the discussion, the space in which they can, think about these and then this. So this is what the entire treatment planning looks like in our offices at least.
Right. No, I think it's important because a lot of fear exists in the minds of people that, I'll be told to do this and I will have no control over what I want to decide. So this is good to know. Dr. Swarupa Mitra, I want to understand, your specialization is radiation oncology, and I want to understand what that entails. What does typically the radiation look like, and, what are the expected benefits, side effects, and what are the kind of patients that are more suited for this treatment?
Yeah. So radiation cancer treatment has two modalities basically. One is a systemic modality of treatment, which is the chemotherapy, targeted therapy, hormone therapy, and another is the local mode of treatment, that is the surgery and the radiation therapy. Basically, radiation therapy is a treatment which is delivered by a machine with X-rays, basically X-rays. There are other treatments also, X-rays. So these X-rays, they act directly on the dividing cells, in the nucleus of the cells, of the bad cells. And that is how they stop these bad cells from dividing. So when we deliver radiation, it is a local treatment. In the previous methods of radiation, we could not save the normal cells. Now we have targeted modes of radiation therapy through which we can target the cancer cells, the cancer or the tumor, and at the same time protect the normal cells. So in doing so, when we are ready, we know that the normal cells are protected, then we can deliver a higher dose to the tumor. And that gives a better cell kill or a better tumor kill. And when you protect the normal tissues, so that means the side effects, the immediate side effects and the late side effects are much less. So what is the outcome? You have a better tumor control and with a lesser side effects and with a better quality of life.
Right.
So she may say that a machine does it, but eventually they plan it. And the way they plan it is what the beauty of the entire treatment is. I wanted to compliment you for the beautiful planning which you guys.
Thank you. And a surgeon saying that, it means a lot.
Medical oncology.
Yeah, medical oncology. Then that is a lot more.
Right, but radiation, and I would say so is surgery, that it is possibly viable when the cancer is not spread out too much. My question to Dr. Kumar Goel is, I'm just curious that are there some patients that are not viable for a surgery as an option of treatment?
I think definitely at any given time there are patients, as Dr. Bhuvan also said, based on the individual type of cancer, organ from which it originates, the stage of cancer, the patient's age, coexisting medical conditions. So what I would like to highlight is that cancer treatment is not one person treating a cancer patient. I am here, Dr. Sarupa is here, Dr. Bhuvan is here, and definitely other people, the pathologists, the radiologists, the plastic surgeon, the cancer care nurses, and so all of us come together, discuss the patient's details, make a treatment plan. There may be sometimes options A, B, or C. So we discuss with the patient and family and then take a call. So surgery and radiation, both being local treatments, basically would be used when the disease is of a sort of extent where you can either remove the whole disease by surgery or you can treat it by radiation. But basically what can be removed or what can be irradiated is changing rapidly in view of what we understand about cancer and how safe, say, surgery or radiation can be. So there are a lot of stage 4 cancers where today curative treatment is an option. So my message always, whenever I go and have any meeting, is that do not tell a patient who has stage 4 cancer that nothing can be done for you. There may be a curative treatment possible, and at times when curative treatment is not possible, we can prolong life. When we cannot even prolong life, we can improve the quality of life. And generally, I think we would have to take the help of, say, Dr. Bhuvan or Dr. Sarupa. So a stage 4 cancer, chemotherapy may be initially given, reduce the extent of cancer. We may remove some by surgery. We may treat, say, nowadays liver metastasis can either be operated or they can be irradiated. Same thing is true of lung metastasis. I would go out on a limb and say 25 years down the line, almost every cancer patient would be potentially completely treatable, whatever be the stage of disease. So we would not be talking about that this is a stage 4 incurable. We will just say this is the extent, this is how we are going to treat it. So
Right.
I would put my reputation at stake, and I would love to be around to see that day.
25 years.
That's so wonderful.
Yes. We are talking about stages, Dr. Prachivanara. When you are counseling somebody for preservation, fertility preservation, does cancer stage matter to you? If a stage 3, stage 4 diagnosis comes to you, can fertility preservation still be an option?
Of course, Megha, the stage is very important. So it is very important to discuss with the medical oncologist and the surgical oncologist about, is there any urgency to start chemotherapy? If at all there is no urgency to start chemotherapy, obviously patient's life is supreme. If there is no urgency, then of course fertility preservation just in a span of 15 days can be done. There are other methods in case proper egg freezing, embryo freezing cannot be done. Then there is a particular injection which is GnRH agonist which can be administered to the lady, which can partly support in building her, protecting her fertility. So yes, all these treatments are done as my fellow panelists have already spoken. It's done in conjugation with all the specialists. It's never one person alone.
Right. Dr. Preeti, getting you in, are there any diets that support a patient while they're undergoing all of these aggressive therapies?
So one thing that we all need to understand is that, just like Sir spoke about the plans, the treatment plans, which involves a multidisciplinary team. So that's where the role of a nutritionist and a dietitian also comes into play, because the treatment plan will also accompany the food plan. So, and it cannot be, like one size fit all. So it has to be customized based on the gender, based on the stage of the cancer, and also the current nutritional status that the person is in, because cancer not only just impacts, the body fat and the proteins or the muscle mass, but it also leads to a lot of micronutrient deficiencies. So we need to make, plans that are well suited for that particular stage and that particular type of cancers. So, in some cases, maybe the oral feeding is not possible. So you might have to think of a different route of feeding that can involve, through tube feeding or nasogastral feeding, depending upon the condition of the person. And in some cases, due to, ulcers in the mouth, which is a result of, your chemotherapies and the treatment, the person is not able to consume the solid food.
Right.
So again, the treatment plan needs to be holistic in a way that it is sustainable, including the food. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. Dr. Chuk, my final round of questions now, and I want to talk to you about this ICMR finding that said that in our country, the burden of cancer is borne more by women than men, and it is opposite across the world. One of the biggest cancers is breast cancer in women, right? Firstly, why do you see this difference of equation in India as opposed to the world? And when women come to you for treatment, what is your advice on how they can prepare for the journey ahead?
So let's split the question in two parts. You said first,
Let's,
why females more? I totally don't agree. I don't think it's not going to be female. I also think that a lot of head and neck cancer would probably not be the part of that study, because the head and neck cancer comes from the lower social strata. I don't think they probably would include it in the number of the ICMR studies, because
So you think it's men more than women?
I think it's either equal or slightly more, because a lot of lung cancer and head and neck cancer does come from certain social status which possibly were not included. I need to look at that ICMR study. I've not looked at it. But I think there would be some caveats. Do you guys agree? Do you think it's more in females?
Agree, yeah.
Can I make a point?
Sure.
I think globally also, overall the burden of cancer in women is marginally higher. What has happened in the Western countries is prostate cancer. If we see the diagnosis of prostate cancer, there is screening for prostate cancer after the age of 50, and there's a very high incidence of prostate cancer in men, say in US and Europe. So, which probably in India we are not diagnosing because screening for prostate cancer is not happening. So, that would be a big factor.
Yeah.
Regarding the breast cancer per se, see, I do a lot of breast cancer, and that's my area of research and specialty. Every different age, every female of every different age will possibly need to prepare itself or herself in an entirely different way. I've had breast cancers in as early as 19 years of age to as early as possibly 90 years of age. So for a college-going 19-year-old girl to prepare for a breast cancer will be an entirely different journey as compared to a 90-year-old who's possibly bedbound. The level of physical activity, it's generally known, not even believed, it's known that the breast cancer in early years, as in the premenopausal years, is a tad bit more aggressive than in the postmenopausal years. The patients who are in between the age of 25 to 35, they want to have a family. So it's very important for me to have a discussion with them and include my fertility specialist about how we're going to do the family. There was this trial called a positive trial. I've had, in the recent past, since the time the trial have come out, 2 of my females have successfully had them carried pregnancies in the survivorship program. So all of these conversations with each patient would be entirely different, considering what age they come from.
But more than treatment, Dr. Chuk, because we've talked about treatment, but I also want to understand, and my question was that while this is happening at different stages, so let's say a college girl, while she's going through the treatment, can she attend college? A working woman, can she be going to work? When we are talking about life after diagnosis, what does it look like?
I would absolutely. So my doctor patients have delivered babies the day they have done their chemotherapy, gone back in the night and have delivered I generally believed in my head, not believed, this is what I tell my patients, that you'll be performing to 80% of your capacity. Your 100% capacity will not be there, but your 80% of your capacities will be there. I've had patients from Delhi, gynecologist, did a delivery, took a pregnancy, took a chemotherapy, went back, took care of the baby, and then her work carried on. There have been judges who have been our patients and then, took the chemotherapy. Next day, they were supposed to sit into a major court hearing. They went back there. My teachers, the patients who have been teachers, obviously there is a lot of mental block when it comes to I'll be losing my hair, I'll go back.
Yeah.
So the positive motivation when you talk to them in the clinic that it's absolutely all right. And the student whom you're teaching, they're also important as part of life. Plus, I have my personal interest. The more they sit at home, the more they're going to disturb me. with the side effects. So I just tell them, please go back to work and make
They're
sure that you'll
possibly
go back.
going to worry more if
Yeah,
they're sitting.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I generally believe that, you should be in a good mental and a physical space to go back to your work. And there was a patient of mine who wanted to attend Olympics between the chemotherapy, and she had, applied for she had applied for an internship during that. She didn't follow up with me, but I was damn sure that I will be able to make sure that she goes and attends the Olympics in between, because it's how you plan the treatment. The life has to go on while the treatment is going on.
Life has to go on, and that's heartening to hear. Dr. Mitra, getting you in, and I want to talk about therapy, radiation therapy, for instance. When the patient is a child, what is the sort of life that the young patient can be looking at while going through treatment and fighting the cancer battle?
Yeah, so pediatric oncology has a different approach.
Okay.
We are treating not only the patient, the parents as well. So as far as radiation treatment is concerned, it is a local treatment, and we take care. We have to keep this in mind that the child has a life ahead. She is going to grow up. So when we deliver radiation, we keep in mind about the bony growth, that is the physical growth, the neurological growth, the hormone. So nowadays, with all the treatment, even a patient who is receiving CSI, that is the craniospinal radiation, we are able to deliver a kind of radiation where the patient has fairly good life. But again, I would like to say that yes, the training has to be proper for delivering radiation to younger patients.
Right.
Now, younger patients, they need anesthesia sometimes.
Okay.
So, and the treatment. So, the other thing we do is that the treatment environment has to be very friendly. It has to be more colorful, with more of toys, with more of music, more of light. So, these things are taken care of. Even the masks which we make for them is made customized for them. If somebody likes a mask which is a Donald Duck, we make a mask like a Donald Duck.
Yeah.
So these things have to be
Just
taken
small
into
things
consideration.
that'll leave an
Absolutely.
impact.
They make a lot of difference.
Dr. Arun Kumar Goyal, want to come to you quickly, and I want to talk about the other aspect. The other big dent. Apart from the health, is the financial dent. When we talk about, the robotic surgery, and we are talking about personalization and AI, is it going to be affordable for everyone? And if not, then what percentage of patients, and what do you think are the kind of changes that you want to see that makes this sort of, the advancements actually reach everyone?
I think, say, when we talk of robotic surgery, as such, for an individual patient, the cost of robotic surgery does not increase significantly.
Okay.
Firstly, whatever the equipment is, it's costly for the hospital, but the hospital utilizes it across multiple specialities.
Okay.
Some equipment are costly, there is an additional cost, but at the same time, the patient can be discharged from the hospital faster. So instead of 6 or 7 days, if they are in the hospital for 4 days, so 3 days of hospital stay and medicines get reduced. So that takes care of the increase in cost. As far as AI and all are concerned, I don't think AI is going to increase the cost. AI is going to increase our efficiency, accuracy and all, and probably should be reducing the overall cost. We are only right now in a phase we are exploring how to best utilize AI.
Right.
So overall, the basic problem, as I said, is in cancer, because we have to use multiple treatments. So previously, it was often that patient was either treated with surgery or with radiation, or if not with either, then chemotherapy. But now we are combining these modalities to get better cure rates.
Right.
That is increasing the cost. The second factor is definitely some of the newer medicines which are being developed in the West. They are priced for America or Europe, and we get the same price translated into India. So those new medicines are costly, but that is an element where definitely the government has to sort of negotiate with these vendors, get negotiated prices for our country, and the support of the third-party payment schemes like Ayushman.
Right, correct. Dr. Prachi, taking that point across, we are talking about getting back to normal, life after diagnosis. But for a young couple that's already spending a lot from their pocket in treatment, what is the kind of cost that would be required for a fertility treatment?
So now IVF and fertility treatment is also more than 40 years old, and thankfully there's a drastic reduction of cost involved in fertility treatment. So typically a egg freezing cycle or an embryo freezing cycle would be somewhere around 1 to 1.2 lakh rupees. There are various options of EMI. Thankfully, the corporate industry has now started giving insurance to such couples. So yes, the cost is coming
so
down.
fertility treatment also
Yes.
is insured?
Yes.
Okay.
Some companies like Google, Apple, Facebook have started giving insurance for fertility
That's great,
treatments.
yeah.
And we are soon hoping that government also takes some actions and involves fertility preservation in the Ayushman scheme. So that's
Yes.
a request.
That's that's the hope. My final question, Dr. Preeti. You know, when we're talking about rebuilding life, getting back to normal, when it comes to our social circle, we you know, a patient would want to, or somebody who's, you know, come out or is in remission would want to come out, hang out, as they say, occasional eating out, drinking out. Is that ever going to be a reality? Is it possible?
So, in the era that we are right now, yes, it's possible. With the support from, you know, a multi-sectoral team that works together to make these treatment plans, yes, it's possible. And also, it's very important that when we're talking about food, we should consider that food is also an emotion. So, you know, when we are sad, we tend to decrease our appetite. It is very automatic, you know. And when we are happy, we tend to consume more. So that's like the neuroscience that works behind it. So food is also linked with our mental health. So when we are planning treatment plans and food plans for patients who are actually coming out of remission or, you know, just on the stage where they are coming back to the normal life, it's very important to take care that what are their likes and dislikes, and to slowly introduce those foods back again in the same manner, whether it is the pattern or whether it is the taste, whether it is the aroma. So that is how, you know, those foods can be introduced again. And if there is, you know, like an emotion attached to it, like a celebration, definitely that can, you know, help them bring back to life. And I think that is the resilience that is required also for them as well, yeah.
Absolutely, and I think this conversation gives a lot of hope that it is possible to rebuild a life and a long, healthy, good quality life even after the cancer diagnosis. Thank you very much to all our panelists for sparing the time, and thank you for being so patient and listening in.